No one could deny Dr. Maya Thompson's brilliance. She was the kind of doctor who seemed to have a gift. Whether it was diagnosing a complex case or calming a worried parent, Maya had a way of making people feel seen, heard, and cared for. She was a black woman in a profession where she often stood out, but that had never stopped her. In fact, it drove her to succeed. Her days were long, but she didn't mind. Maya loved her work at the local hospital. She loved being able to save lives and bring hope to families in their darkest moments. What she didn't love were the moments when people underestimated her, when patients hesitated because of the color of her skin, or when colleagues dismissed her ideas. But Maya had grown used to it. She had learned to rise above it. One evening Maya's shift had just ended. She was exhausted, ready to head home and finally get some rest. But as she walked out to her car in the hospital parking lot, she heard a commotion. A panicked voice cut through the quiet night. "Help! Someone help!" Maya's instincts kicked in immediately. She followed the voice and found a young mother kneeling beside her child. The little boy, no older than 6, was lying on the ground, his lips pale, his breath shallow. The mother was sobbing, her hands shaking as she tried to figure out what to do. "What happened?" Maya asked, kneeling beside them. The mother looked up, her eyes wide with fear. He just collapsed. I don't know what's wrong." Maya quickly assessed the situation. The boy's pulse was weak and his breathing was labored. It was clear he needed immediate medical attention. "I'm a doctor," Maya said calmly, pulling her stethoscope out of her bag. "I'm going to help him." The mother nodded, desperate for someone to take control. Maya worked swiftly, her hands steady as she checked the boy's vitals. She began administering CPR, her focus razor-sharp. Seconds felt like hours, but Maya didn't stop. She knew how crucial these moments were. After what felt like an eternity, the boy gasped, his chest rising as air filled his lungs. His mother let out a cry of relief, tears streaming down her face. "He's breathing," she sobbed. "Oh, my God, thank you." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with relief. "He's stable for now, but we need to get him to the hospital immediately." Just as she was helping the mother lift the boy, flashing lights filled the parking lot. A police car screeched to a halt, and an officer stepped out, his hand resting on his holstered gun. His eyes scanned the scene, narrowing as they landed on Maya. "What's going on here?" the cop barked, his tone sharp. The mother started to explain, but the cop held up a hand, silencing her. His gaze was fixed on Maya, suspicion etched into his face. "I got a call about a disturbance," he said, his eyes cold. "What are you doing here?" Maya straightened, keeping her voice calm. "I'm a doctor. This boy collapsed, and I was helping him. He needs to get to the hospital." The cop didn't budge. His eyes flicked to the mother, then back to Maya. "Do you have any proof you're a doctor?" Maya blinked, caught off guard. "Proof? I just saved this boy's life. We don't have time for this." But the cop wasn't listening. He stepped closer, his hand tightening on his belt. "I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but I'm going to need to see some ID." The mother interjected, her voice shaking. "She's telling the truth. She saved my son. Please just let us go to the hospital." The cop ignored her, his focus still on Maya. "Let me see your bag," he demanded. "I need to make sure you don't have anything suspicious." Maya felt a surge of anger but forced herself to stay composed. "Suspicious? Are you serious right now? This child's life is at stake." The cop's expression hardened. "You don't get to question me. Hand over the bag." Maya hesitated. She knew arguing would only escalate the situation, but the unfairness of it all made her blood boil. Finally she handed over her bag, her jaw tight with frustration. The cop rifled through it, pulling out her stethoscope, her medical tools, and her hospital ID. He studied the ID for a moment before tossing it back into the bag. "You're lucky this checks out," he muttered. "Lucky?" Maya snapped, unable to hold back any longer. "I just saved this boy's life, and you're treating me like a criminal. How dare you?" The cop's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone." Before Maya could respond, the boy let out a small whimper, his eyes fluttering open. The mother gasped, clutching her son tightly. "Mommy," the boy murmured, his voice weak but steady. The mother burst into tears, holding him close. "Oh, baby, you're okay, you're okay." Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. Despite everything, the boy was going to be all right. But her relief was short-lived as the cop stepped closer, his tone still accusatory. "I'm going to need you to come down to the station," he said to Maya. "We need to file a report." Maya stared at him, incredulous. "A report for what? Doing my job?" The cop didn't answer. He simply motioned for her to follow him. The mother tried to protest, but the cop silenced her with a glare. Maya took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had done nothing wrong. She had saved a life. But she also knew that in situations like this the truth didn't always matter. She glanced at the mother, who was clutching her son, her eyes filled with gratitude and guilt. "It's okay," Maya said softly. "I'll go." At the station, the cop continued to question her, his tone dripping with skepticism. Maya answered each question calmly, refusing to let his attitude rattle her. She knew who she was. She knew she had done nothing wrong. Hours later, another officer entered the room, his expression serious. He handed the cop a file and whispered something in his ear. The cop's face shifted, his confidence faltering for the first time. Maya watched as he read the file, his jaw tightening. Finally, he looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "You're free to go," he said, his tone begrudging. Maya stood, her eyes locking with his. "What changed?" The cop didn't answer, but the other officer stepped forward, his tone apologetic. "We ran a background check. Turns out you're one of the top pediatric surgeons in the state. The boy's mother also called in, praising you for saving her son's life." Maya felt a mix of relief and frustration. "You could have listened to me from the start." The cop avoided her gaze, his demeanor suddenly subdued. Maya didn't wait for an apology. She knew it wouldn't come. Instead, she walked out of the station, her head held high. The next day, Maya returned to the hospital, determined to focus on her work. But the incident from the night before lingered in her mind. It wasn't the first time she'd faced such treatment, and she doubted it would be the last. Still, she couldn't shake the anger and frustration at how the cop had treated her for simply doing her job. Later that week, Maya was surprised to receive a phone call from the hospital's legal team. They informed her that the boy's mother had filed a formal complaint against the cop. Her account of the incident, combined with Maya's testimony and the hospital's surveillance footage, painted a clear picture of racial bias and misconduct. Maya wasn't sure whether to feel hopeful or skeptical. She had seen such complaints brushed aside too many times. But this time, something felt different. 2 weeks later, Maya was asked to attend a meeting at the mayor's office. When she arrived, she found the boy's mother, several city officials, and even the police chief waiting for her. The atmosphere was tense but purposeful. The police chief, a stern-looking woman with graying hair, addressed Maya directly. "Dr. Thompson, first, let me apologize on behalf of the department. The behavior you experienced was unacceptable, and does not reflect the values we strive to uphold." Maya listened quietly, her expression unreadable. "The officer in question," the chief continued, "has been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. Based on the evidence, it's clear his actions were rooted in bias, and we take that very seriously. He will face disciplinary action, which may include termination." Maya felt a flicker of satisfaction. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step in the right direction. The boy's mother spoke up, her voice filled with determination. "What happened that night wasn't just about me or my son. It was about how people like Dr. Thompson are treated every day. This can't keep happening." The mayor nodded. "You're absolutely right, and we're taking steps to ensure accountability. Effective immediately, we're implementing mandatory bias training for all officers and reviewing policies to prevent incidents like this in the future." Maya spoke up for the first time. Her voice was calm but firm. "Words are a good start, but actions are what matter. If you want real change, it has to go beyond training. It's about holding people accountable, no matter their position." The room fell silent, her words hanging in the air. The mayor nodded, clearly taking her point to heart. A few days later, Maya received a letter from the police department, formally acknowledging their mishandling of the situation and offering a public apology. The letter also stated that the officer had been suspended without pay and would be required to undergo extensive training before his case could be reviewed further. For Maya, it wasn't just about the apology or the disciplinary action. It was about the larger message, that standing up to injustice could lead to change. Months later, Maya received an unexpected visitor at the hospital. It was the officer who had accused her that night. His demeanor was completely different, hesitant, almost remorseful. "I wanted to apologize," he began awkwardly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how wrong I was. I judged you without cause, and I'm sorry for the pain I caused." Maya studied him for a moment. She could see the discomfort in his eyes, but also a hint of as he left, Maya felt a sense of closure. The incident hadn't defined her. It had strengthened her resolve. She knew the road to justice was long and often frustrating, but moments like these reminded her that change was possible. Sometimes it started with holding one person accountable. Other times it began with changing the system itself. Maya returned to her work with renewed determination, knowing she would continue to fight for what was right, both in and out of the hospital. Sincerity. "I appreciate the apology," she said finally. "But remember, it's not just about me. It's about how you treat everyone moving forward. If you truly want to make amends, show it through your actions." The officer nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I will.